So welcome to the first All Partners webinar of the year. We did have Confluence in April, so we saw a lot of you there, and if you couldn't make it, we missed you. Maybe in 2026, we'll see you. But we are sort of carrying forward some of the conversations from Confluence. Jaimie spoke there. She didn't have quite as much time, so I'm really excited that she was willing to come share a little bit more about the program and that we'd have some space for people to ask questions, about the application process and things like that. So super excited for this, and I'm guessing a lot of the folks here are as well. If you're new to WCCN, I like to give a little intro in all of these webinars and all partners gatherings, just a little bit about who we are. The network is open to pretty much anyone working on collaborative conservation across the Western United States. And we are a network, so we do have some on-the-ground projects in terms of Nicole Reese, for example, is working with our emerging leaders working group on a mentorship best practices toolkit, which actually we'll be doing another all partners in December about that as an example. But for the most part, what the network focuses on is these community building and learning opportunities. So we try to provide some spaces for different partners to share their work, the tools that they're building, the programs that they're putting out there, and to connect our community and our network to those tools so that we can do our work better and learn from each other. So like I said, the door is open, and we, if you've been a part of WCCN, we're super happy to see you again. And if you're kind of new to this sphere, we're really happy to have you, and we hope that you'll kind of stay a part of this community. So I'll leave it at that. There is a QR code if you want to find out more about us. And along with the chat, I will share this little PowerPoint so you can reference that whenever you're ready. So if you have not met Jaimie before, I'll do a little background for her. Jaimie Baxter is the Collaborative Capacity Program Manager for the National Forest Foundation. She recently received a master's degree in environmental studies with a focus on landscape scale conservation and stewardship policy, and co-led research on capacity building and landscape scale outcomes. If you haven't seen her research, I'm sure we could share that, but that's something the WCCN network has been super enthusiastic about, and super grateful for Jaimie's work delving into that. And that research was in collaboration with the California Landscape Stewardship Network. She has over a decade of experience leading community programs and public lands and stewardship projects. So super excited to have Jaimie here. Jaimie, thank you so much. I am going to stop sharing my screen and hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariana, and nice to see you all. Saw some very familiar names in the chat and also some new names. So nice to meet those of you who I have not met previously. Just gonna get my slides up here. So great. Yeah, Ariana, thanks so much for the warm introduction. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to join the WCCN at Confluence this year. It was actually my second time going to Confluence, and it's always been a really wonderful time and just a great community of people. I always kind of feel like I'm home, like I get to be around people who I can easily talk about this work with. It's not that easy talking even to my mother about what I do. So it's really nice to be in community with you all and to be here today to talk about this program. So yeah, as Ariana said, I work with the National Forest Foundation, and I'll describe a little bit about our work in a few minutes, but I'm really excited to roll out this new program that we're calling the Collaborative Capacity Program for Forests and Communities. This program has a few different pillars in it, and I'm primarily going to be talking about our financial awards program today, but we are currently working on a technical assistance arm as well as a peer learning aspect, much like the work that the WCCN does so well. So hopefully we're going to talk about being a little bit more complementary in that work. But today, here to talk about the funding opportunity and dive into that a little bit more. So briefly, I just wanted to introduce the team that is working on this program here at NFF. On the left, we have Carrie Morse, who's on our Conservation Awards team. She really manages all of the outgoing awards that we have from the National Forest Foundation, from anything to the competitive grants, like the one that I'm going to share with you today, to invited grants, to even contracts and procurement. So we do a lot of contracting with the Forest Service, and Carrie helps lead all of that. And then myself and Rebecca Brickner, who's also on the Conservation Awards team. She is potentially joining us today to answer some of the grant administration questions, having a little bit of network issues. So I'm going to do this full presentation, but she might jump in the chat occasionally to answer some questions. And her role is really to do all of the grant administration for this program. So if you end up applying for the program and get awarded, or even just have questions about the program before applying, she's going to be your main point of contact to answer those questions. Anything technical or administrative, she is your person. So just a brief overview of what I'm going to be chatting about today. We did release finally the request for proposals for this funding opportunity about 2 weeks ago. So that request for proposals is super detailed. There's a lot of information in there. We also have an FAQ document posted on our website as well. So I'm not going to go word by word through that, but I'm going to give you like a really broad overview of the program, some of the details on the funding priorities, and some of the proposal requirements and the criteria that we're really looking at to evaluate our proposals. And then we'll save plenty of time for questions at the end. So a bit of background and just a general overview of the program. The National Forest Foundation, for those of you who may not be super familiar, we were started in 1991 and actually designated by Congress to be the nonprofit partner of the U.S. Forest Service. So we work in really close partnership with the Forest Service nationwide. We are mostly a remote working organization, but we do have several people working within National Forests doing a lot of direct field site work, reforestation. We have folks who are even working on conservation finance and thinking about some of the ins and outs of that with the Forest Service. We clearly have grant programs like the one I'm going to share with you today. We also think a lot about facilitation of collaborative efforts, and some of our staff are even on the ground facilitating collaboratives, for example, in Idaho with the Shoshone-Benoit Collaborative, the Panhandle Collaborative. We have folks working in Montana as well with the Montana Forest Action Council. So we kind of span scales in very local, hyper place-based to even regional and national-based collaborative efforts. We offer fellowship opportunities and know that workforce development is really important for our field. So we actually, this next week, are going to be onboarding our next round of about 12 fellows who will be working closely with staff in the NFF across the organization. They usually are a year-long fellowship position, and their work really varies across the organization. And then we have a whole team of people who are actively trying to inspire the public to get personally involved through volunteering or potentially even donating if they have the means. So the program I'm sharing with you today is really a partnership, even within NFF, of two different programs. One is our Conservation Awards program that I mentioned earlier that Carrie supports, as well as Rebecca. And these stats are from the last year, but are still pretty impressive. So since 2001 up until 2023, the NFF's Conservation Awards program has provided around $110 million in award funds and have funded around 3,000 projects nationwide. These projects include on-the-ground conservation and restoration projects, so really that implementation focus. But we've even done capacity building in the past. We used to have a program called the Community Capacity and Landscape Stewardship Program that was much more regionally focused and had a little bit of a smaller award number. But we're really happy to be able to reinvigorate the capacity building arm of this work and offer some funding for that. And all of this work, the money invested and the projects that have been supported comes to around $300 million of outcomes valued. So kind of tripled the amount of the investments there that we're putting into it. And this is really in part and parcel to all of the wonderful partners and the grantees that apply for funding, doing incredible work throughout the country with Forest Service system lands. Next is the Conservation Connect program. That is the program that I'm promptly situated in and work more closely with. Our really mantra and our effort is really to bring people together to find shared solutions for forest stewardship challenges. So we really are the collaboration focus, the capacity building arm of NFF. We provide support for, as I mentioned earlier, place-based collaboration, so really staff invested in very specific areas, either working with a specific forest or a specific district or unit. We also have staff working at the regional and national level doing facilitation. An example of the national effort is that we have a staff member who's facilitating some conversation around the mature and old growth amendment, the rule amendment plan, and really thinking about some of the impacts of that amendment and facilitating some dialogue around that across the US and with different forests. And then the capacity building program, which as you can assume is the program that I manage and is really focused on building the skills and tools and investing in the resources that make collaboration successful. So on that note, this is the Collaborative Capacity Program for Forests and Communities. We received about $5 million last year in bipartisan infrastructure law funding from the Forest Service through an agreement. This program has been in the design phase for about a year and a half. And really thinking through with that funding that we received, what would be the most impactful way to build capacity across the country and through the field of collaborative forest stewardship. And thinking about this being a very collaboration focused grant program, we wanted to also do our design in collaboration and in partnership with those folks who may be most impacted or supported through our work. And so I should also say with the bipartisan infrastructure law funding and our agreement with NFF is that we really had a mandate to think about collaboration in more expansive and more inclusive ways. So we specifically had a mandate and a focus to center on historically excluded communities and tribal nations in collaboration for forestry work. So you'll see that recognized in the pathways that we designed in this funding program and really throughout the language in the RFP as well. So as I mentioned, we're really here to provide resources, invest in those skills and tools that make collaboration successful, and really think about the activities for tribal co-stewardship and collaboration for forest stewardship. We also know that collaboration is evolving and expanding. We really see collaboration as a tool and a field of practice for finding solutions to complex forest management challenges. So, we know that there is issues with extreme wildfire, climate change stressors, and concerns about sustainable recreation all across the country. Those are themes that we heard from our advisory team. And we know that collaboration with diverse interests really help in make sure that we are increasing the pace and scale of work across boundaries and across jurisdictions to really support project planning and eventually really meet some of the needs that we have in and across our forest lands. We know that There are also several examples of equitable decision-making and inclusive processes. And we've seen that, documented through several different means, whether that be through traditional governance documents, traditional co-stewardship agreements, MOUs, really being transparent about who is involved in a collaborative process, who is currently not involved, some of the information around decision making, and really transparency around decision making for the land itself. So our program was really rooted in this logic model that you see here. If you reviewed the RFP, you may have seen that our eligible use of funds is split into two different buckets. And one of those buckets is the collaborative elements bucket, and the other is the collaborative activities bucket. And this really stems actually from some research that I did last year with the California Landscape Stewardship Network that Ariana mentioned earlier, but we're really looking at these collaborative elements as the things that make collaboration activities successful or at least even supported. So we list elements such as dedicated staff members to think about coordination and facilitation, elements like the skills and tools to be able to collaborate. We see those as being really the backbone, the support of collaborative activities being able to occur. And those collaborative activities, which can also be funded, are like meetings and convenings. Being able to travel to a meeting is one of the classic barriers of being able to actually see successful collaboration. Even for collaborative activities, we see situation assessments or feasibility studies, really trying to understand what the collaborative needs to be able to move forward and really enable those landscape scale social and ecological outcomes that we all hope to see, right? So I think we like this logic model and kind of thinking about how our investments will eventually lead to greater landscape scale social and ecological outcomes. So getting into the details, that was a lot of background. The funding that we have available for this program, we have about $2.5 million over 3 rounds. We're promoting a round every year for the next 3 years. So this is our first round. Our next round will be round 2 in 2025. Our third round will be round 3 in 2026. This first round of applications are due July 12th. It's a tighter turnaround than we'd actually prefer, but that is because we want to get funding out the door by this fiscal year, and we know it's a little tighter than ideal, but that's what we're working with this year. Next year, we're going to have a much longer on-ramp for folks to be able to submit proposals for. We are targeting about 25% for Region 6, which is Oregon and Washington. So that's Region 6 of the U.S. Forest Service. The reason why we have that allocation is that Region 6 had some extra funding that they chipped in for this pot of funds, and we are allocating at least 25% back to them into their collaborative groups that support that work. And then we also are targeting about 25%, and this is a minimum 25% for our tribal applicants pathway, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about. So because of that mandate and that focus from the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, and really a big promotion from our advisory team about really wanting to make sure that this funding pot was equitable and inclusive of different forms of collaboration, we decided to have 2 different pathways of funding. One is our tribal applicants pathway, and the other is our all applicants pathway. The tribal applicants pathway, to be eligible to apply through this track, you have to be a federally recognized tribal government or tribal organization. We know that there are several ways that federally recognized tribes and even their organizations engage with the Forest Service. So this could be through government to government consultation, through formal agreements such as co-stewardship agreements, or through more informal ways of collaboration. And we know that that takes a lot of resources and capacity to do so. I want to be clear here that NFF is really seeking to provide that capacity support where needed, and really doesn't intend in doesn't really want to at all interfere with the really strong and important government to government, sovereign to sovereign relationships. That is very important that the Forest Service upholds their trust responsibility to tribes, and we're really here just to provide the capacity and support for that to occur, but in no way interfere with that. The second pathway that we have is our all applicants pathway. To be eligible for this pathway, one must be a nonprofit organization, a local government entity. We include state recognized tribal governments in this pathway as well as colleges and universities who are working in collaboration. We do take fiscal sponsorship, and we know that collaboration and collaborative groups aren't always their own 501c3, so we do support fiscal sponsorship for anyone who is seeking to apply for funding. So getting in kind of to the nitty-gritty details of the funding itself and some of the criteria for applying. Our budget and timing. We have awards ranging from a minimum of $10,000 to a maximum of $150,000. There are different requirements in the application process. You may have seen this in the RFP if you're applying for funding below $50,000 or above $50,000, but we know that there's a wide range of needs out there for collaborative groups. The performance period will begin in September of 2024, so just in a couple of months, and awards may run up to 2 years. So we're offering either a 1-year award or a 2-year award. We're really excited to not require a cash or in-kind match, but we are encouraging it where possible, especially with requests over $50,000, and that's specific to this round. Match is not a factor in project evaluation, so if you're unable to meet match, you will not be judged any differently in the evaluation process through the proposals. The eligible use of funds, alluded to it a little bit earlier in thinking about the collaborative elements and activities, but one of the key criteria of this program is that it must support collaboration and collaboration-based activities that aim to benefit National Forest System lands. These funds are not eligible for being used for on-the-ground project implementation activities. We know, and the research shows, that there is more funding available for project implementation than there is for capacity building. So we're really excited to be offering that as an opportunity, and we're putting all of our funding into that bucket. The funding will support direct costs to support collaboration through the elements and activities. As I mentioned, those can be anything from dedicated staff or contractors, communications and data sharing systems, skill building, workshops, stipends. We have a list in our RFP. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but we tried to be comprehensive. But if you have questions about it, please feel free to ask those at the Q&A or in an email later. So just thinking about what a good fit for the proposals may be, starting what may not be a great fit for the program. Anything with advocacy or litigation, we're not able to fund with federal funds. Equipment purchases for individual organizations, projects, as I mentioned, that are on the ground implementation focused only, and then any operating costs that aren't associated with collaborative efforts. And to reiterate, a good fit for the program would be efforts that focus on equitable and inclusive collaboration amongst multiple partners and or between federally recognized tribes and the Forest Service. I'd say federally recognized tribes and tribal organizations, the Forest Service, and that, you know, any of these entities that really aim to benefit National Forest System lands. And what makes a competitive proposal? So this is the first year that we're rolling out this program. These, suggestions are based really in kind of the design of the program, and I'm sure they will evolve as we get more proposals this year. But what we see as a strong fit for the overall program is to be able to clearly describe the connection between capacity investments and your long-term strategy that will eventually benefit those lands that are managed by the National Forest. to be able to describe very clearly the geographically relevant communities that will be impacted by your proposal and by your work. And then really focusing on the quality of the whole proposal itself while addressing all of the evaluation criteria. That evaluation criteria is listed in the request for proposals. So to give you a little bit more of a grounded idea of the types of proposals that we're anticipating in this first round, I should note that the first two examples that I'm about to share with you are absolutely made up organizations and an absolutely made up scope of work. So this is more of just giving you some ideas of what we kind of anticipated and workshopped with our advisory team and setting up this this grant opportunity. So the first one we're calling the Great Lakes Collaborative Forest Stewardship Network, and they support collaborative groups across the Great Lakes region, including a collaborative group that works with the Superior National Forest. The network is, through their proposal, is requesting about $30,000 to facilitate a series of workshops that will focus on best practices for inclusive and equitable collaboration. And they're particularly interested in how they can support their local tribes in the area. So that's one potential proposal that we see. The next, we're calling the Houston Sustainable Recreation Coalition. And the title of their proposal is Increasing Sustainable and Equitable Recreation Across or Access from the Bayou City to the National Forest of East Texas. And they're proposing through their several partners representing diverse perspectives in the urban areas of Houston that they're interested in starting a collaborative forest stewardship group to increase sustainable recreation in the Sam Houston National Forest and several other national forests in East Texas. And they're requesting around $50,000 over 2 years to hire a part-time facilitator to write their strategic plan. So really getting them launched and off the ground. And this next example, the Tule River Tribe is a very real tribe. This is an example that we chose because we know that the Tule River Tribe successfully has written a co-stewardship agreement with Sequoia National Forest. But an example potentially through the tribal applicants pathway is that the Tule River Tribe could apply to this program to support conversations and relationship building for writing a co-stewardship agreement that would establish a framework to better protect ceremonial and traditional activities, food sources, and also to rely on traditional tribal knowledge in making land management decisions. And so we, estimate that the Tule River Tribe could ask for around $100,000 in funding over 2 years to support a staff position for writing the agreement and working closely with Sequoia National Forest. So just a couple of examples to give you some ideas of how we kind of perceived this program and some of the eligible use of funds within it. Getting into the details about actually applying for funding, we are requiring a letter of support for both pathways. For the all applicants pathway, we require a letter of support from the Forest Service, really just outlining support of the work and acknowledging the partnership and the efforts that the potential grantee is looking to accomplish. Now, if this applicant includes tribal organizations or tribal government in its proposal, we would also like to see a letter of support from the tribe or organization acknowledging and approving and supporting of the efforts to apply for funding. For the tribal pathway, we are looking for a letter of support from tribal leadership, and that could look like a tribal resolution or a letter of support from a specific tribal department. We really want to make these letters of support, not a barrier for getting funding, but we do think it's important to acknowledge that the collaboration is supported by those who are involved, and this is kind of our way of doing that, and happy to answer questions about this as well. So a bit of an overview of the application process. We really asked that you thoroughly review the RFP. There's a lot of information in there. We're happy to answer questions at any time, but there's a good deal of context and info in that RFP, including the evaluation criteria. From that RFP, there's a link in there that will allow you to access and complete the pre-screening questionnaire. There's one for the tribal applicant pathway and one for the all applicants pathway. And that pre-screening questionnaire is about 10 questions, should take you less than 5 minutes, and will automatically generate a password that will allow you to initiate an application through our online system if you meet all the criteria in that pre-screening questionnaire. From there, you can use our online application system to submit an application. And again, at any time, we have staff happy to answer any questions, technical or just even thinking through specific questions and how to respond to those. And lastly, a bit about our evaluation criteria and application review. We are still organizing our review committee, but it will consist of staff from NFF, as well as Forest Service staff, potentially through the Office of Tribal Relations with the Tribal Applicants Pathway, as well as folks in the National Partnership Office. We also are recruiting external reviewers that are relevant to the program priorities and communities, and we're really looking forward to bringing those folks on. As I mentioned, the evaluation criteria are listed in the RFP, and all criteria are weighted equally. And we're looking forward to receiving all of your proposals. So I think I'll end here. Happy to answer any questions. And this is my contact information below, and I'm happy to put that in the chat as well.